44 cars trying to qualify for 500.
Good morning, gearheads. Welcome to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. We're very excited. We are 1 hour away from the Formula One Spanish Grand Prix. This is John Massengale sitting in the studio with Jonathan Green and Les Kaiser. How are you, gentlemen?
Man, ready for this race. I
Hola.
love Barcelona.
Hola.
Jonathan, you've been there. This is going to be exciting for you to tell us about it and your experience there and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Been there many times. It's actually sort of designed as a motorcycle track, so there's been some changes over the years to accommodate Formula One. And I say accommodate because Formula One lives there as well, because it does their preseason testing there with Haas. But traditionally, the Spanish Grand Prix at this point in the calendar is usually the fourth or fifth race of the year, and obviously we didn't have things like Miami and so on before that. So it was traditionally seen as the first real European race, and what I meant by that is the first time to get the upgrades.
Yeah.
So the first time you really were in anger. Well, what I mean by real is...
You're going to have to explain that.
Okay, then.
Especially after Miami.
Well, okay, sit back, I'll tell you. So basically it was seen as the first time they were running on a track where they had data from preseason testing, and also where they've got previous data from many, many years before. Whereas like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, all the ones that have come before, and now Miami, you didn't. So this was I could say that at the end of this race, you'll get a better understanding of who's got what. If Mercedes are going to be in the fight this season, this is the weekend to decide that.
Yeah, and it looks like they finally are getting close to that. So we shall see. Bob Varsha is going to join us here momentarily. In fact, I think he has logged on. Good morning, Mr. Varsha. How are you?
Good morning, guys. It's been a long, long day and a long trip here to Barcelona.
I take my hat off to you. So you're clearly on the grid, right?
No, it's funny. Actually, I spent all my time trying to get a plug adapter so that I could plug in my computer. But, the rumors are flying all over this place about how disorganized the race is out at Montmeló, which is just a few miles outside of Barcelona. Long lines of traffic, long ticket lines, and pretty high heat. I mean, it's very, very hot here. So, it's not the greatest Formula One experience. And I suppose the Spanish Grand Prix will be one of the races that's going to have to up its game, regardless of what happens at those big, spectacular United States events. But, the way practice and qualifying went, it's going to be a great race, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, speaking of the heat, we have Chris Medland out on the grid today, and I think we've got him connected into the show. Chris Medland, how are you this afternoon for you?
Yeah, afternoon here, morning to you guys. Hopefully
morning.
You can all hear me loud and clear.
Yep, we got you.
Perfect. Yeah, I've yet to make my way to the grid. I'm just in the paddock right now, and yeah, Bob's got it spot on. It is roasting. And yeah, traffic was a nightmare. So there was a bit of chaos outside, but we're in just about in time. And it's 36C, just gone over 36C. So what we're talking there, like 97, I guess.
Wow.
That sort of, high 90s. So it's a warm one.
You by the
Not quite
sea,
as humid as Miami.
Yeah, you by the sea, is there any breeze? Is there anything to keep a little bit cooler?
It's a little bit breezy, but the track's inland enough that you don't really feel that close to the sea. You're probably about, 15 miles, 20 miles down to the sea from here. So it's not too far, but it's we're not right on it. So yeah, it's there's a slight breeze right now. I've timed it well that I'm in the garages between the paddock and pit lane. It's a lot cooler here, so I might just stand here and just grab people as they walk by.
Well, I doubt you'll
do the.
Go ahead, Bob.
I did the calculation. 36 Celsius is 97 degrees Fahrenheit.
Baby.
Oh, there we go. And I've got it easy. So you guys give me quite a nice basic setup. I'm just wearing a shirt and some jeans, and I never wear shorts. So I always think that's unprofessional. But right now, I'm looking at the number of mechanics that are ready to go onto the grid. They've got all the tires on their trolleys in tire blankets, jacks, and equipment that they'll put around their grid slot. And these guys having to wear fireproof suits, guys and girls, obviously. The Haas people have got bucket hats on to try and keep out of the sun. But it is so hot, like even just normally. But for people in some of these fireproof layers, it will be roasting. I genuinely think it's going to be very, very tough, not just for the drivers, but for the teams as well, and for all the fans. Most of them are uncovered here out in the sun. So, yeah, it's going to be a long, hot afternoon.
Well, Chris, I mean, we're all talking about all the people, but has there been any discussion with anybody yet at all about what's going to go on with the cars? I know it was hot yesterday, but this is even hotter. I mean, we could potentially have some sort of heat problems with the cars, tires, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so Fernando Alonso already starting, he dropped that in Q1. He's taken a brand new power unit, which is, I mean, it's just smart tactically, but reliability as well. It's going to be working hard in the heat. So he'll be starting at the very back now. But yeah, we saw Pierre Gasly had a heat shield issue yesterday in FP3, which meant there was smoke coming from his car, and he ended up having to miss that whole final practice session. A lot of cars with issues. Mick Schumacher with one of his brakes catching fire and then exploding in the pit lane, and he did a great job actually not to run over any of his mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
He found a little gap to avoid them. One of them fell over but didn't get injured, which is very good. So yeah, there's already been issues, and like you say, that was when it's a bit cooler. I think one of the things we'll see, one will be tires, whether they can make a 2-stop work, or if the surface temperature gets too hot and they slide around too much and they end up 3-stopping. But secondly will be when a car's following another car, and if they're in what is essentially a hotter wake of another car, even though it's, you know, less of a big deal right now, but or, you know, this year that following isn't such an issue. In terms of cooling, it's still an issue. So if you're not getting lots of airflow to your car to cool it, then it can really struggle. And you might see drivers that are either dropping back or pulling out of the slipstream early to find clear air to try and cool their car a bit better. So that'll be interesting to see as well as the race unfolds.
Chris, I want to ask the burning question, and it is kind of Judgment Day. I mentioned that Spain traditionally is an upgrade weekend, and you'll, at the end of this weekend, know who's got what. The question is Mercedes going to be part of this fight? They're currently qualified 4th and 6th, which is a much better showing, but have they solved their problems, and are they going to be forced to be reckoned with again?
Well, when you said the burning question, I thought you meant about my arms. I've got them exposed right now. And I'm going head-to-head with Ted Kravitz right now in the pit lane. He's going to kick me again.
Oh, dear. He's got shorts on, hasn't he?
He has got shorts on.
Yeah.
Ted's been smarter. I think he's actually staring at my jeans to go, "You're an idiot." I believe that's the face he's
I think that's
right
his
now.
school uniform still.
No, he's been smart. His legs are out, and they're better looking than mine. Mine are hidden away. But he's inspecting my gear. Mercedes, sorry. Yes, I think they've made a big step forward. They've made clear progress. So while they haven't solved every problem that they had previously, there was clearly a gain. The car on Friday especially, there was hardly any porpoising with it. It did return a little bit on Saturday, certainly through the high-speed corners at turn 3 and turn 9, but on the straights, they weren't getting it so much. But the main thing now is it showed that the direction they're going in is improving the car, and it kind of instantly put them in a position where they looked like they're in the fight. Now Leclerc's lap was great, and there was clearly pace in that Ferrari too, which has been upgraded here. Red Bull haven't really brought much, and Mercedes were closer to Red Bull than they were to Ferrari. But George Russell, interestingly, said he thinks Mercedes' race pace is more competitive than its qualifying pace. So that bodes well from 4th. That says, you know, I can get in a mix. I mean, we've seen him make some great starts so far this year. Both drivers have had kind of moments where they've been able to show their skill, and then the cars maybe hampered them. But for George especially, he's tended to go forwards in races. So to be starting 4th already, surely he's got to be targeting a podium. And I don't think that's out the question. I think that Ferrari were really worried about their tyre wear on Friday. They did a long run on Saturday morning, which is unusual, but they did that in FP3 to try and improve it. Charles Leclerc said he thought they'd found something, but that's still not certain. They'll find out in the race. Whereas Mercedes were a little bit more settled. So there's a chance that even if the raw pace doesn't match the Ferrari, that based on tyre wear, tyre usage, and the car balance, that maybe Mercedes can be a bit of a threat. So I think very much in that mix now. Even if they come 5th and 6th and a distant behind Red Bull and Ferrari again, it feels like that Mercedes is now the comfortably 3rd quickest car and looking to nip at the heels of the top 2, rather than going to be fighting regularly to get through ahead of the Alfa Romeos and the McLarens and the Haases.
Yeah, I mean, it looks
Chris,
like. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, Chris, would it be fair to say that the pure quality of the car may not be quite as important in this race as tire strategy and management and usage? I think the way the tires degrade is going to mask or enhance the fundamental qualities of the car. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's going to be the big thing for a lot of teams. And this is hotter than we had as well. So as much as they already knew they were struggling on Friday, I was speaking to Mario Isola last night, and he was saying on Friday we saw the teams all trying to protect the rear tyres. So they were thinking about the final sector, getting good traction out onto the main straight, and they were trying to set their cars up to look after the rear tyres. And then pretty much all of them after that went, oh, the front left is taking too much of a battering in turn 3 and turn 9. We need to kind of adjust the balance to protect that a bit more. So trying to find that compromise is hard. And I think we'll have different teams who will have a different balance in terms of which end of the car and which set of or which kind of axle they're protecting the tyres for. And that will then, one approach is likely to be better than the other over a race distance. We just don't know for sure which is which. So, for example, if Mercedes are protecting the rears and Red Bull and Ferrari are protecting the front left more, and it turns out protecting your rears is better, then they're going to be stronger even if their car isn't quite as quick. So, yeah, that focus, especially this weekend. I mean, tyres are always important, but especially this weekend, that focus could really play a bigger difference in terms of relative performance.
Hey, Chris, I got to ask you about the Haas F1 team. I mean, to me, that was one of the biggest surprises of this weekend. We talked to Gunther, and he says, I'm not going to be bringing upgrades, and everybody else is bringing upgrades, all the focus on Ferrari and Mercedes. And all of a sudden, Haas, both cars, first time ever for Mick in Q3, and they both look great.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly what they were saying, wasn't it, in the build-up, we think there's more potential in this car, and we need to work out how to get it out of it first before we worry about then changing the car with new parts. And when someone says that, I saw some cynical responses that it was just because they don't have the money and because they'd lost their sponsor and stuff that they therefore didn't have the development potential, or because they hadn't developed the car last year and they'd struggled with development in the previous years that they just aren't good at it. Now, it might still be the case that they struggle to improve the car with developments. Upgrading it might be maybe their biggest challenge this year. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't the right approach with such a new car to make sure they're getting everything out of it. And on a track, I think what helped coming here as well, it's why a lot of people use upgrade or bring upgrades to this circuit, because they know the circuit so well, so they can compare it to what they've had before. But at the same time, if you don't think you're getting everything out of your car, but you've got previous data from this track from testing, of which Haas didn't have loads because they had a bit of a tough preseason 3 days at this track, but you do have some data, and you can look at that historically with the same car, the only place they've been able to do that apart from Bahrain, and go, okay, right, this is what we found in testing. This is where the strengths and weaknesses were. These are the problems that everyone was having, and it kind of helps your setup direction, helps you start the weekend on the right foot. Maybe it helps you try a few things different to when you were here for testing, because you know what you can revert to. So it made sense to not rock the boat too much. And that really played out. And I'll admit, after Q1, I thought everyone was getting ahead of themselves. I said, yeah, they look good in Q1, but you don't always see everyone's full performance in Q1. The top cars just get through safely. We've seen a few times when teams look good in Q1 and then they drop out quite lowly in Q2. And Guan Yu Zhou was an example of that yesterday. He was, I think, 9th in Q1. And I thought, hello, he's got a shot at Q3. And he was slowest in Q2. He was nowhere. So sometimes it plays out that way. So I reserved judgment on Haas. And then, yeah, Q2 was stunning. And if anything, I think Magnussen was maybe slightly disappointed to only be 8th. I think he thought he might be able to maybe get ahead of Bottas and get himself alongside or right behind Hamilton. But yeah, a great job from them. And it's really good to see, because this team's been working hard and we've seen the progress they've made. But this was maybe the first weekend where they could have hit back, and they haven't, which is excellent news.
Chris, was there any follow-up from Schumacher's fire, effectively? I mean, is it something that they're ongoing worried about, or was it just a sort of an anomaly?
I believe it was just an anomaly. I haven't actually heard any follow-up from it, but because it was very early in that session, I believe it was just a cooling issue that triggered it, that they hadn't quite got their settings right. And they're not alone on that front. Aston Martin, as everyone will see when Bob runs through the grid, right at the back, both cars out in Q1, despite it looking very much like a Red Bull and being heavily updated. But that car was just not working, and partly because it's so updated, so they've got a lot of understanding of it to do. But another thing they said is the new package means they have to make compromises on cooling. And this weekend is not a weekend you want to make compromises on cooling. You need as much cooling as you can get. So, all teams are struggling with that sort of thing. And I think with Mick, it just was that they pushed it a bit too much. And you only find out once it starts to go wrong.
Chris, I know the Haas guys were called in to the race steward But apparently they weren't the only ones. There was speeding on pit lane. Has there been some explanation why half the grid got called in for speeding and what that was about?
Yeah, it was kind of the opposite, actually. So as soon as they left pit lane, it was for not going quickly enough. So it was for on the out lap. Once you left the pit lane, you had to do a lap. You had a maximum lap time you could do to avoid drivers going unnecessarily slowly to start their qualifying laps and impeding each other. So all of the drivers got warned about it, I think, ahead of Q2 starting. We heard a radio message from Pierre Gasly's engineer saying as much. And it turned out that 18 drivers had done it on 55 laps applied to it. So most of them had done it multiple times. And because of that, they were like, okay, clearly they haven't quite understood what we want from them here. But the reason most of the times it happened was that they were all in a train. So you had, 12, 13, 14 cars in a row, all trying to space themselves out, follow each other. And what they said was that train was led by the two Haas guys. Because Haas are at the far end of the pit lane, they're first out on track, they're setting the pace in qualifying on the outlaps. And that those two were, at different times, the lead car going too slowly, which was forcing everyone else to go too slowly. So that's why they didn't penalise or investigate anyone else. But similarly, because no one was really quite on top of it or aware, and because so many drivers were then caught out without actually realising, FIA only warned the drivers and said, look, this is fairly new. This is what we intended this rule to be and what we expect you to do. But because everyone's done it, you only get a warning this time. If it happens again for everybody, it's going to be a harsher penalty. Like, this is the first and only warning, really, where we say, you've misunderstood the assignment. Now you know what you have to do. You don't have another excuse.
That's a good way to put it. You misunderstood the assignment. All right, guys, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue with Chris live over in Barcelona and have lots more after this.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right, welcome back to the show. We're live in the studio in Austin, where we got Chris Medland in Barcelona and Bob Varsha, coincidentally, in Bob Varsha on the way to his next gig. So we got a full house here, very excited. Hey, Chris, speaking of all the incredible heat, 97 degrees Fahrenheit over there, 36°C, have you seen any refreshing green Red Bull that you can go grab to cool down with?
I'm stood by Max Verstappen's grid slot right now, and I'm looking around. I don't see any green cans as the pit lane opens, so I don't know if you can hear cars by me or not. But it was the practice session. They had the green edition of their drink on the pit wall, just as a little bit of fun poking back at Aston Martin for the green Red Bull car design. I think they quite enjoyed that, but there's serious undertones to it in terms of Red Bull hinting that they think some IP was stolen, basically transferred, and data maybe downloaded by someone who then ended up moving across to Aston Martin from Red Bull, because a number of personnel have. And at this stage, it doesn't really affect Red Bull because Aston Martin are miles away down the back, but it certainly could in the future. Aston Martin, have that budget to be that strong. So that's why there's some needle there. But no, I'll keep an eye out to see if anyone walks around with one in hand. Maybe Christian Horner or Helmut Marko will be doing interviews with one. But no, there's none down here right now.
It's interesting, Chris. The guys and I were talking about it during our Saturday call. I think there's two different stories at play here. One is that you hire a bunch of guys from a successful team for what they have in their heads. And that's exactly how Sir Jackie Stewart put it when he said, of course, I hired those guys for my Formula One team back in the day. I wanted to use the knowledge that they had, and all's fair. But what Christian Horner is talking about, to me, it seems, is cyber espionage. He's worried about intellectual property not being leaked or not being carried to another team, but being stolen by competitors up and down the pit lane. Is that an overdramatic read, or are those kinds of rumblings about?
No, that's exactly it. It's more, as Christian himself said, as you just explained, you can't take ideas, memories, knowledge out of someone's head when they leave a team. And the point being, though, that they stay with the Aston Martin thing is Aston Martin's defense was that they were investigated by the FIA for potentially reverse engineering the Red Bull car. So illegally trying to photograph it, scan it, which has been banned, and then use that knowledge of the car, or as much imagery of the car they could get, to then basically copy it in reverse. And they don't want teams doing that. So that's illegal. That you have to prove how you got to your development point. And Aston Martin went, well, we had it in the wind tunnel in November. We had it long before we saw the Red Bull. So we didn't do that. And the FIA said, great, sure, that's fine. And Red Bull go, no, we get that. So how did they know about our car if they hadn't seen it yet? Someone must have told them or shown them. And that's where Christian Horner's then going. Helmut Marko said that there had been evidence of data being downloaded. But then Christian Horner was like, well, I'm a bit wary of him going that far. I'm not sure they can guarantee that's what happened. But they're looking into whether anyone accessed their data, their property, remotely, which can be done by the FIA, so they can check up what teams are doing. But that also means it can be done by pretty much anyone who works for the team if they have the right access, and whether they try to download anything or view anything or pass on actual data and information that was not yet public knowledge, hadn't been seen on track, and pass it on to Aston Martin before even moving there. It's a much, much more serious accusation if it turns out to be true. Aston Martin, as you'd expect, have been very firm with their response, saying, no, we didn't. But then this is a team that was saying the same thing when they were getting questions about their pink Mercedes.
Correct.
Years ago.
Yeah.
So it does make it it adds to the suspicion, shall we say, because this isn't the first time they've been involved in such a situation.
Chris, this is a good segue because, we've had CrowdStrike sponsor us and last year and this year. And also, they've been a big sponsor within Formula One, and they're sponsoring all across motorsports. But this is exactly what they do. And they prevent these types of espionage in the sport. Espionage, but of course, corporate espionage is all over the place.
Global.
And globally. And I know, Les, you and I, technology is a big part of our daily jobs. And in fact, at my office, that's what we use is CrowdStrike. And I think this is exactly why they decided to come to motorsports, because this is a great example. I mean, Jonathan, what was it, $100 million
McLaren played, when they stupidly copied the Ferrari pre-season, and they were caught doing it by the guy in the copy shop who went, oh, that looks like the Ferrari.
Wow.
Yeah, and $100 million later.
Wasn't it?
Yeah,
that story. If you don't know it as a fan, you got to look it up. It's
a great story.
But of course, Max Mosley said, well, it was only, what did he say? It was only the fine for appropriating the Ferrari drawings was $5 million. The other $95 million was because Ron Dennis, who ran McLaren back then, was going around being a you-know-what.
Yep.
I was wondering if you were going to use the word there, Bob. I tell you.
No.
Well, in the last bit about what CrowdStrike does is there are industries that previously may not have thought of themselves as a high risk. And, that's some of what I deal with. Utilities and things like that you may not have thought of. Your water supply. A lot of folks don't think of that. So it's really different in where that's going now. So, but absolutely back to the sport. Yes. How do you do that between teams, controlling it? Obviously, you lock down mechanics and whatnot with contracts themselves, so they can't go mid-season from one team to another. Is probably one of your best self-defenses on that.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's a huge part of the sport, and we're going to see more about it.
But yesterday...
Yeah, absolutely. It does. As the more stuff they have to simulate and do away from a racetrack, the more gets stored on computers that people need to protect.
I cannot remember which team this was, but in history, there was a team who wore basically checkered pants, large checkered hash pattern pants, all of their teammates, all the crew members. And what they would do is the crew members would disperse across the paddock anytime a car was out, and they'd walk around the car getting photographs of team members near it, and they could use that checkered block pattern as a measurement device.
Wow.
To scale
a grid.
the automobile, to scale the dimensions of the race car. How's that for sneaky?
There was also some great espionage done by, I think it was a guy called Darren Heath, waited for a McLaren to stop and for the driver to get out, and he launched his camera into the cockpit and discovered an extra pedal.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those were the good old days. I've been thrown out of more team garages than I can count. Yeah, for snapping pictures.
Yeah.
But that was back in the days when the teams would actually put up giant, like Japanese screens in front of their pits until, Formula One management stepped up and said, no, you're not going to do that anymore. Then, of course, we had digital photography, which made it even much more precise than the old 35 millimeter film. It's been huge. And I think it was either Miami or, gosh, I can't remember a race, but the TV cameras were focusing on I think it was a Red Bull, the one of the wheel hubs, and all of a sudden you start seeing these mechanics' legs come into the picture and start blocking, the view. Oh, sorry, TV, I have to stand here so that you can't see what we're doing. It's it's pure gamesmanship, but it's also kind of fun.
As usual, Paul Bryan chimes in on Twitter as our conversation.
Yeah, I know. Just looked at that.
he said, yes, espionage is the world's second oldest profession.
And race is second oldest profession.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But
that, honestly, that is actually an intriguing part of what Formula One's all about. It's a moving target, as we always say, but the espionage and it's the old adage, imitation is flattery. I mean, that's the point. If somebody's doing something good, then why aren't we doing it too?
Right.
Yeah. Chris,
and I must say, one of the things that was interesting to see, we have a pit lane walk on Friday where all of the teams now have to put one of their cars out in front of their garage and explain the upgrades they've made. So that you can have a look at it and see the new parts on the car. And we were, as journalists and media, were walking up and down and taking a look at some of the cars. And I've got down as far as Alfa Romeo, because sadly for Haas, with no upgrades, it wasn't actually worth looking at the differences there. And I was walking back and I noticed James Key, the technical director of McLaren, coming the other way. And suddenly this media opportunity is a great chance for the technical directors to come down and have a close look at everyone else's cars and see the new parts on it. He was like, absolutely, I'm coming to see. And then he was a little bit disappointed to see the Aston Martin and what they'd managed to do, because he said, if you've been on a big recruitment drive like that and suddenly you end up with a car that's very similar, like that doesn't seem, that's frustrating, I think was the term he used. I don't think he accused them of any wrongdoing. It was just more, with the budget they have, the money they have, he felt like that was maybe a loophole if they had exploited it legally that needed closing so that you couldn't see that sort of crossover so quickly.
Well, speaking of CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60. Our digital world is more than just interconnected, it's interdependent. And because of that, security is a top concern for every organization. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team knows they're a potential target for a host of digital attacks, which is why they leverage the CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deploy end-to-end security solutions. CrowdStrike revolutionized cybersecurity by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Our cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends organizations against increasingly complex threats, so you can have the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. And thanks, everybody, for supporting CrowdStrike. And don't forget that XM/ at the end of that URL. All right, guys, let's take a quick break. Yeah.
Breaking news, but Max Verstappen just got out of the pit lane with 5 seconds to spare before they closed it. So I don't know what's been going on with that Red Bull, but they've had it in the garage until the very last minute. Wow. But he made it out. So he'll make it to the grid, but that was a damn close call. So I'll try and hover at Red Bull to see what's going on down there.
Oh,
good work.
All right, let's go to break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right, welcome back to the show. And we got Chris on the grid. And Bob, why don't we get you to run down the grid for us? It's all of us are looking forward to that.
Okay, well, don't oversell it. We were 3 hours late getting in here today, so but I'll give it a shot off the top of my head. Okay, here we go. On pole, the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, who has his fourth of the year. All of his career victories have come from pole position. Now, that doesn't mean when he's on pole, he always wins, but when he does win, you know where he started, P1. And for the fourth time this year, he starts alongside, Max Verstappen. And we've been hearing about Max's problems, allegedly his DRS, but he's making his way around to the grid as we speak, and we'll see what he can do. Inside row 2, Carlos Sainz Jr. And it must have really gotten him in a craw watching his father, the rally legend and 2-time world champion Carlos Sainz Sr., present the Pirelli Pole Award to Junior's teammates, Charles Leclerc.
Hey, at least he was on the team.
Next to him will be George Russell in the first of the resurgent Mercedes. They've done a great job this weekend, but they've been quick in practice before, so we'll have to see if this will stick. Inside row 3, Sergio Perez, who's about to start talks on a new contract with Red Bull, and he'll be alongside Lewis Hamilton, out-qualified by his young teammate Russell for the first time in which both drivers made Q3, which hasn't happened very often this year. On to row 4, Valtteri Bottas lost an engine in his Alfa Romeo on Friday, but qualified really well, and he continues to harass the team that cut him loose last year. Next to him, wonder of wonders, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas Ferrari. On row 5, inside, Daniel Ricciardo, who has outqualified his young teammate Lando Norris for the first time in forever. Next to him, Mick Schumacher up into Q3. The Haas teammates both in Q3, and we hope it goes well for the race. Norris is on the inside of row 6. Next to him, Esteban Ocon and the Alpine teammates. Ocon and Fernando Alonso have to be biting their tongues in the biggest possible way. They just showed no speed at all this weekend. Inside row 7, Yuki Tsunoda, who starts alongside his, AlphaTauri teammate Pierre Gasly, and that's further back than we expect those AlphaTauris to be. Inside row 8 is Zhu Guanyu in the second Alpha. Next to him, Sebastian Vettel, and as we said earlier in the show, the Aston Martin cars came heavily revised, looking very much like the Red Bull machinery, but it didn't result in any rocketing up the timesheets. Inside row 9, Fernando Alonso, the 2-time world champion, in front of his home fans. That has to be galling. Next to him, Lance Stroll in the second of the Astons. And on the final row, the 2 Williams teammates, Alex Albon starting P19 and Nicolas Latifi in the 20th spot.
And just on that quickly for Bob, understandably because he was traveling in, but Fernando Alonso now is 20th, having taken a new power unit. So
right.
Oh, really? Changed the components? Okay.
Yeah, they've taken their 4th of a number of components, mainly because he was already starting, as you said, solo down after that poor qualifying. So they were like, well, might as well do it now. They call it reliability. I mean, it will help in the heat, but yeah, so Alonso last on the grid now. But I've just seen Christian Horner while we're on a break and I had a quick chat with him. Who was very quick to dismiss any issue, no worries, no stress. He says it's fine, as does his head of communications. I'm still not convinced because Max got onto the grid late. He jumped straight out the car and went straight into the garage. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm just going to try and grab a couple of team bosses if I can that are lingering around. One of them is our friend, if he's up for it. Good to Steiner, just putting on his aviators and looking as cool as anything. And He's been beaten, though, by someone with a camera has beaten me to him, so I'll have to linger a bit longer. But he's got a big smile on his face because, like you say, both cars in the top 10. They're lined up one behind the other right now. Gerhard Berger wants to come and congratulate him on the grid right now. He's just saying, well done, good job. I mean, it's not easy running an F1 team. And making calls like the one he made, not to introduce upgrades, not to rush anything, is a big one. So I'll see if I can grab him in a second while I fight my way through this scrum. I say doing my best Martin Brundle impression, but I'm going to try and make sure I get everything right, or just don't say anything.
Well, while you do that, we should also point out that Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris have had complete chassis changes. I'm not sure what Sainz's problem was, but Norris did it just running over the curbs. So that tells you something about the challenges posed by this racetrack.
Yeah, he broke his floor and they had to repair the floor, which they managed to do, but change the chassis. So he's got the fixed floor, but on a new chassis, which is quite interesting. But actually, as you speak about Lando Norris, I'm going to try and get Zach Brown because he's chatting away to Emerson Fittipaldi here. It's always very cool to see Emma on the grid as well. So I won't interrupt that chat. But now it's all done. I will just ask Zach. Zach, how do you think you're shaping up today? Because starting probably a bit further back than it looked like you might, especially with Lando losing his best time in Q2.
Yeah, that was a bit disappointing. Missed it by about an inch, but the rules are the rules. I think we've got good race cars for today. We'll see how many stops it is. It's really hot.
It's really hot.
It's really hot. So I'm going to make a few stops. We'll see how many of the race cars do. I think Daniel and Lando are in a little better shape than me.
Yeah, maybe. But I was going to say, what we've seen from your car as well, though, is it's heavily updated. When we got the list of updates, you had the most areas you'd updated of any team on the grid with 10. Like, have you been happy with the work that's been done with this car?
Yeah, everything's working as planned. We didn't get quite as much time to work on the setup when Lando's car was damaged. We started with the development pieces on his car, validate them, and then you'd work on setup. But we spent most of the time in the garage, so I don't think we've optimized the car, but I think it's a good start.
Well, we might grab you after the race to see how it goes if you haven't disappeared, because are you going to be going to Monaco next week or Indy?
I'm Indianapolis.
Jealous. Although Monaco's not my place to be. Well, good luck today and have fun in Indy.
Thank you.
I'll take his credential for Monaco.
Yeah, me too.
I'll steal it off him when he tries to leave.
Just another point, guys. I'm sure you're aware, but big afternoon for the Haas team. They have 15 points as a team. They are one behind AlphaTauri. A chance to go to 7th place if they score more points than AlphaTauri today.
Is Chris on the line, or is he bird dogging somebody?
I am still here. I am trying to pick who to chase down the grid next.
Something else
is very popular today. We normally get him quite easily, but I think everyone's seen the job he's done and the changes they did or didn't make and have gone, wow, this is impressive, and they want to talk to him. So I'm going to get my elbows out in a bit. I'm going to get rude.
Chris, with regard to the engine failure in the Alpha for Valtteri Bottas, is anybody suggesting that that's a chronic problem for the Ferraris, that there's some weakness there, or was that just a one-off?
No, that seems to have been a one-off. I mean, again, some of these engines by now are still like the first units of the year they're getting run in practice, having done quite a lot of mileage. Not huge, I'm only on race 6, and they've got to get to race 22 this year, but they've done better mileage than you get in the first few. So certain weaknesses can crop up. Sometimes it's an installation issue. We haven't seen any other cars have to run anything any lower. If anything, if you look at the speed of the Ferraris this weekend and with their upgrade, their top speed seems to have improved. So, I don't see any concerns there on that front.
Good.
Hey, speaking of that, you just talked about Verstappen almost not getting out there with only 5 seconds. I mean, this has been all year long. We've seen Red Bull with issues. I mean, including yesterday in qualifying. That's why he didn't get his last run in, because his DRS didn't work. I mean, yes, Red Bull's been crazy fast, but let's not forget we had a couple of DNFs at the beginning of the season. It's been chronic all year long for Red Bull.
I'm really curious about that, with how much of that is going on from all these. To me, they're in the fight. They really are legitimately against, Leclerc and Sainz right now. And so, usually they've just been looking up and it's been Hamilton for the most part way out ahead. I feel like the competition between Ferrari and Red Bull is tighter than it's been in quite a few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chris, what were you going to say about that?
You mentioned the DRS issue. They have changed that DRS system on Verstappen's car overnight. They're allowed to change the DRS actuator and some other components around it to make sure they don't have the same problem. Good for Sainz going from interview to interview, but I've grabbed him finally. You're so popular because you did nothing this weekend and went very quick.
No, I in general do nothing, so it's not something new what we do. No, we didn't do any updates, but I think the guys did a good job, the whole team did a good job to put the car in a status that we can go into Q3, and here we are.
Yeah, and both cars as well. I mean, you must be really excited for what you can do today, because you probably have the most knowledge of any car on this grid in terms of how it reacts over race distance right now.
I don't know about that one, but the race is always a different thing. It's very hot today. Today will be a little bit of who can get to the tires to the best usage without deterioration. So it will be a tough race, but starting like this, at least you have got a good chance, So we will try to our best and keep on digging.
And just finally, any issues with mixed brakes after yesterday? Did you solve the issue?
Yeah, all sorted. It's all good.
Good stuff. Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing how Haas do. Good. Thank you very much for your time. He has been genuinely. I was probably about the 6th or 7th interview he's just done in a row. He's tried to move from his grid boxes and he can't get anywhere. Poor guy. But that's
the downside of improving.
What did he say?
I do nothing anyway.
I generally do nothing.
Gene, I'm doing nothing. It's working.
Gene was stood by him right then as well.
All right.
Gene was stood right there. So that was, he heard him say that.
How many times have you seen Gene, I mean, at these races? Because I don't remember him being at all of them every year.
Quite a lot, actually. He does come to quite a few. It's a long way to come. Yeah, he came across from California. I believe he was flying in fairly late for this one, but he was coming. On Thursday, I was told he was coming, so he obviously wasn't here that early. But he just beat Bob here, I think, basically. But yeah, it was a long old flight for him, just for one race. But I imagine then he'll stay in the region and be here for Monaco too, since it's a back-to-back. Every race from now on is at least a back-to-back, if not a triple header. So there's a lot. This is when everyone's a little bit more fresh, but for these guys and girls that are right now cooking on the grid, I'm stood around the Mercedes mechanics, and they've got black fire suits on as well, in 36 degree, 97 Fahrenheit heat. And they've got to work so hard, then pack it up as quick as they can after the race, get it to Monaco, do it all again.
Oh, wow. All right, well, hey, guys, let's get a last break in. When we come back, we'll be about 15 minutes for the race. You're listening to Speed City, and we'll be back after these messages.
I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
Jonathan Green, you have been to Barcelona many times to this circuit.
Yes.
Why don't you give us a little perspective here?
Okay, well, as the boys have been telling you, it is always hot, doesn't matter what time of year, but this is traditionally, like I said, the first major European event that they have proper data, and you heard Gunter referring to that. But it's a race that's steeped in history. I mean, they've been racing Spanish races of this sort of type since 1913. Obviously, it joined the World Championship in 51, Fangio winning that. But it's had some more modern, traditional sort of classic wins. I'll never forget, and I was just watching YouTube and listening to Bob Varsha describe it. In 1994, Michael Schumacher managed to get a podium in fifth gear.
Oh, yeah.
He led by 20 seconds ahead of Damon Hill. With a normal gearbox, and then all the gears went by fifth. And because he was a sports car driver for Mercedes back in the day, he knew how to keep the revs up. He did 2 pit stops in fifth gear.
Yeah, pit stops in fifth gear.
Think about that.
Sorry to interrupt that story, but like you say, that was a tale of reliability issues. And Red Bull had one with the DRS yesterday, but Christian Horner's with me here, and we're looking at Max Verstappen's car on the grid. Christian, all issues fixed on the car?
Yeah, we believe so. We're just doing some last-minute checks before we left the garage just to ensure. And it all seems okay. So, hopefully we're now on the race, and hopefully we need a good start on the dirty side of the grid and then get into understanding what the tyres are going to do.
Yeah, I mean, your race pace looked really good on Friday compared to Ferrari, but Ferrari think they made some gains on Saturday. So have you got a read on where this is going to be won and lost? Do you think you've got the advantage still?
I think strategy is going to be crucial. I think track position is always an advantage in Barcelona, but we've seen the cars can follow more closely. So, we saw in the Formula 2 race a lot of degradation as well. So, it's going to be a fascinating Grand Prix. And don't also rule out Mercedes.
Exactly. You've got George Russell right behind you ahead of Checo. Are you kind of a bit worried about him? Could he impact your race with Checo's car?
Well, of course, and it's important for us to make sure we get a good start and we try and put Charles under pressure. So, it's been so close throughout the season so far. Today could be another thriller.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Just finally, we were talking about that earlier on the show. Been a bit of a row with Aston Martin and their upgraded car. Is that a row that's going to go on for some time? Have you had answers that you're satisfied with yet?
I think really it's something that the FIA, they have all the access, they have all the knowledge. So, I'm sure they'll be dealing with it accordingly.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing what happens there. Christian, thank you very much. Good luck today.
Yeah, Chris, we're actually watching on television Checo dump his head in water. And just to cool down, you're probably standing right near that, but he just completely drenched his entire head in water to try to cool down.
Yeah, I mean, Max was wearing a ice pack around him, like as a bodysuit, to stay cool. I mean, of course, these guys are trying to stay cool now. I talk about I'm hot here on the grid, but I got to go inside to somewhere air conditioned for the race. They get into a cockpit that's going to get a heck of a lot hotter. So that's the challenge they face. Is they're trying to stay as cool as possible for as long as possible before they just can't control it anymore once they're in the car. And another thing about these cars, though, they're heavy. And because of the weight, a lot of teams have been cutting down on the drink systems that they put in the cars.
Yeah.
So they've been trying to limit how much drinks that they're carrying because that is weight. And obviously you drink it down as the race goes on, but you start with that weight and you don't want to penalize yourself. So some drivers have been doing it barely without any drink in the car. A day like today, boy, do you need it, because I'm parched right now and I've only been out here for 45 minutes or so. They're about to do 2 hours in this heat.
That seems detrimental to the health of the team, never mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Kevin Magnussen with one of those suits on just a minute ago like you're talking about. It looks like they have the tubes circulating all throughout the chest area to keep him cool. So that is clearly the number one issue that everyone's talking about on the grid down there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they focus on a lot. I mean, they've got good practice for it. We go to some places that are extremely humid, places like in the past, we'd go to, say, Malaysia, and you get these sorts of temperatures plus humidity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were talking about the heat of Miami, weren't we? That was a hot one. But this is just kind of a different type of heat, and it's slightly unusual. Spain is getting a heat wave. It's down well over 100 in the south of Spain, and it's been kind of creeping up towards us here. So, yeah, it's not always the same. As Johnny was saying, you know, it's regularly warm here. We haven't had a wet race, I don't think, since '96. But we don't tend to get this higher temperature. So a little bit unexpected because it came on quite late. I think everyone's expecting temperatures about 10, 15 Fahrenheit lower than this when they flew out here. And then they've been faced with a different challenge. So that normally makes for good racing. That's the bit that I'm looking forward to.
Well, I want to make sure everybody knows the Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Chris, you should have mentioned that to Christian Horner, that he can go to crowdstrike.com/XM.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, CrowdStrike might be on the Mercedes.
So they are. You're right.
That's it.
But
a lead balloon.
Very quickly, we'll grab Stefano Domenicali on the grid. Sorry to interrupt. Stefano, massive crowd here this weekend. How excited are you to be, back in Spain, but with seeing this interest here in a place we've been coming for a long time?
You know, the incredible thing is that this enthusiasm we see here in Barcelona, in Spain, is unique, it's fantastic, but it's what we are living everywhere we go. And so you see every place has a special characteristic. There is only one thing that is uniting all of us, the love for this sport and the end-to-end everything that is around it. So we are very blessed and happy to see that this is the emotion that you live when you come into a Formula 1 race.
And speaking of excitement for this sport, as we stand here, we can see Charles Leclerc on pole position and Max Verstappen alongside him in second, and a long run down to turn one for these two to go wheel to wheel. Just how excited are you about the way this race is set up today?
I remember incredible starts from Fernando Alonso when I was there. He was leading, was starting so behind, so everything can happen. And with this heat, you know, we may have 2 or 3 stops, you never know. So it will be very, very, very interesting.
And then straight to Monaco, so not a bad run for F1, is it right now?
Well, that's the Formula 1 today. The rhythm is there, the passion is also there, so it's good.
Well, we look forward to seeing how today goes and next week. Thank you, Stefano.
Nice job, Chris, getting the CEO of Formula 1. And I loved, I could see the smile on his face without a camera.
Yeah.
And him raising his hand and saying, you know, that's great, though.
Absolutely. I'm not sure who he's with. I must apologize.
Well, with good reason.
I did apologize.
I saw a number somewhere that...
Sorry, go on, Bob.
Well, I was just going to add that I saw a number. They're expecting 110,000 people out there. That's a monster crowd for Spain.
Yeah, and that's what they sold for every day. They had that on every single day, which was very, very impressive. They not everyone comes on every day with those tickets, but they sold their capacity for all 3 days. So technically, you could have had 330,000 here over the weekend, which would have been very strong. Although, yeah, the traffic issues were not particularly helpful on that front.
Chris, give us some strategy. I read your article on racer.com, big plug. But why don't you tell our audience that don't get up early enough to do that? What is the strategy? Because I do think that this Grand Prix is always a race of strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Pirelli, I've been speaking to them. Definitely a 2-stop they're expecting. They said you could try a 1-stop, starting probably on the hard tyre, running to try to get close to lap 40 before pitting for mediums. But that you'd have to go so slowly on those hards and manage them so much that it's just impossible, really. You'd lose too much time. So they don't expect anyone to do that. That was the strategy that Max Verstappen went for last year and finished second. Lewis Hamilton went for a 2-stop and 1. But the 2-stop with most starting on mediums, trying to get to around sort of lap 25 window. Then if they've got 2 sets of mediums, which is most teams in the top half, most drivers, should I say, have at least 2 sets, then they can switch again to another set of mediums, do the same sort of length of stint, and then finish on the softs. And that's because for some teams, they think the hard tyre is not a very good race tyre. It's too slow. Other teams get it working quite well and are happy with it. So for those teams, they might go medium hard and then see how long they can get, and either go to mediums again if it's not working for them, or go to the softs on the end, or there might be a few further back that will start hard, run as long as they can, a bit like George Russell did in Miami, but they don't expect it'll be that long a stint, and then switch to mediums if it's quite early, or even do 2 stints on the softs if they can get those working. But to have a car that works on both the hard and the soft is unusual, so I don't think we'll really see that one play out. But 2 stops at least. Some could do 3. One very telling thing we'll have to watch or listen for the commentary to tell us if Charles Leclerc does this, is that he has a brand new set of softs. He saved them in Q2, the only driver to do it in the top 10, because he wanted a brand new set to start on potentially because of the launch advantage that could give him. Because it's a long run to turn 1, and as Christian Horner said to us, track position is key. So if he can keep Verstappen behind on the first lap through a tyre advantage, then he can dictate the pace a bit more, manage those softs to make that first stint work a bit better, to then switch to the mediums or even the hards if he wanted to. So we could see an anomaly there right at the very front. That'll be intriguing if they go for that.
Hey, Chris, talk about turn 1. We got about 2 minutes left in the show. Give us a quick prediction on turn 1.
I am going to go for fireworks, but I tell you what, not between Max and Charles too much. I reckon Charles is going to come out in the lead. Maybe he might have to get forced wide a little bit, but I don't think Max is going to do the sort of move he pulled on Lewis. I don't think he'll be that aggressive because he's the one now chasing, and he's got a quick enough car that I think knows he can sit in second place and hope that the strategy comes to him. At least that's what he said yesterday, that he doesn't need to risk it all at the start. But I think further back, I think there's some really closely matched midfield teams. And because turn 1 is followed by a high-speed turn 2 that goes the other way, like drivers and cars are quite often 2, 3, sometimes even 4 wide somehow through there, trying to get the inside line at 1 or the inside line for 2, whichever way they want to play it. But they don't give up. You don't have a definitely better line into that first corner. So they fight hard through there. And I think in the midfield, because it will be so crucial to your strategy to be ahead of any slower cars or make gains. I'm quite interested to see what George Russell does, though. Really, he's up front in a competitive car for the first time. It might not be quick enough on race pace to beat the Ferraris and Red Bulls, but it's quick enough on the first lap for him to get ahead of a few. So I'd love to see how he approaches it. And also Lewis Hamilton, he's had actually rotten luck, hasn't he, with safety cars and stuff that's cost him a few points, and people like to point it out. But he's been right there with George in the races. But George just seems to have that 10th in qualifying. So I think Lewis will be pretty fired up to kind of reverse those fortunes very quickly. So, yeah, watch for the two silver arrows at the start.
All right. Well, let's do some quick. What do you got, Jonathan?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to go straight to predictions.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, Lewis Hamilton has owned this race. He's won it the last 5 times. He's been back against the wall to get his season started. This is the day. This is the time to do it. Because, well, I mean, he's going to be looking at his own record going, well, if I'm going to get this, if I'm going to have to go to 22 races, I got to start competing now.
All right, Les, who you got? 5 seconds.
Sainz.
Okay, Bob.
Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez.
Woo. Chris, who's going to win?
Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton.
There you go. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in, and don't forget, stay tuned for the entire race right here on SiriusXM, and stay tuned for our post-race show, where we'll have more from Chris and everything else. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you after the race.